Welcome, everybody, to the antacid for the great gaslighting, and welcome to Reality B. We have a great group of people in the house today, and I'm so excited to be talking about them with a topic that is affecting all of us, and that is our self-censorship that is occurring in our reality today. It seems like we can think things in the privacy of our own homes, but if we dare to speak of them, if we dare to mention them on Facebook or on any social media, the tirade of anger and disgust that comes to us, that shuts down discussion. And without discussion, where are we as a civilization? It is a very precarious place that we find ourselves in today. And I do believe it is part of the control mechanism that has been constructed around us in this diabolical reality that is known as consensus reality. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is I'm going to introduce you to the amazing people that we have with us today. And we are going to start with, let me bring up Mr. Herowitt Tilton. Hello, Herowitt. Oops, darling, turn your mic on so that we can hear you.
Oh.
There you go. We can hear you, darling.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Welcome to Reality B, darling.
Thank you so much, Vanese. It's lovely to be here.
Have you yourself found that you have had to self-censor yourself in this reality? And if so, what has that done to you personally?
Well, I'm constantly censoring myself with family and friends, as well as in the wider social media. I'm kind of okay with it in the sense that I study it. So I'm kind of interested in the mechanisms, and because I'm coming from a Jungian perspective, I'm interested in the way in which the shadow, what Jung would call the shadow, is tied up with this censorship process. Because I think the shadow on the individual level is kind of the gateway to this collective shadow, which is this sort of manipulative demonic force that curates our reality. So, and the gateway to it is this individual shadow, which is related to trauma and to various junctures in our life where we've adopted certain states of consciousness which perhaps refract the light of reality in different ways. And so, yes, that's what I'm interested in, is how these two collective shadow and individual shadow.
It's so interesting that you bring that up, my dear, because I literally just came off a shadow workshop. Marbel, maybe bring us both up. Yes, I just came off a shadow workshop, literally like moments before this. And we were talking about the idea of the individual shadow and how the external impacts that so much. And we were actually talking about the idea of capitalism and how capitalism is so insidious and infects our lives in so many ways that we don't even understand it. But we were also talking about the shadow as it pertains to our existence in previous lives and things that we've made in terms of vows of chastity, vows of silence, vows of poverty, and how things that aren't even part of our existence in this reality that reside as shadow aspects of our personality are impacting so many aspects of our lives. And this vow of silence, this idea that something in the past that we may have said or that put us in a very difficult and precarious situation, that at that time, that moment of death even, we're like, I'm never going to say that ever again at that moment of death, because it got us into such a predicament last time that possibly that is part of the self-repression, the self-inquisitor that we are operating within, let alone the algorithms and the internet and the AI that are controlling our ability to speak clearly these days.
Yeah, I think that that sort of that mechanism, or that sort of machine which we find ourselves in, which is presenting a certain picture of reality, which is, I mean, perhaps part of it is the capitalism and the profit motive, and this is the reality which makes a cabal money and gives them power. But yeah, I think its point of entry to the individual is the shadow, the trauma related to shadows, to the states of consciousness which the shadow cultivates. And so liberating ourselves from the shadow, from my perspective, is the key to seeing beyond that construct and actually liberating ourselves from the cabal. And whether that cabal is a worldly cabal or whether it's a metaphysical cabal is another really interesting question, because I think in a sense we're just looking at minions of the Archons, in a sense. That this is the cabal on this earth. They imagine themselves to be perhaps the center of existence, but they're actually just minions of higher powers, more sinister, archetypal or metaphysical entities. So, that's kind of my perspective.
Darling, I'm going to ask Joanna to come up here because Joanna just wrote a whole book about this subject, and we can keep Herowitt up too. But hello, Joanna.
Hi, how are you? Hello, everyone.
Hi,
It's
Joanna.
such an interesting thing that that Herowitt just brought up, that there is, these forces on other levels that may be coming down to us through the AI and, influencing humanities in ways that a lot of us may not even be aware of. And you have literally just put the final stamp on a whole book about this idea. So what do you feel yourself about, influences?
Maybe I will make it more personal rather than talking about the book right away.
Sure.
Or at all. So for me, the reason why I joined this session, because it is very personal, because I'm a working academic. And I recently had a meeting with two of my colleagues, and we're writing an academic paper which doesn't relate to anything that my book is about. And I always feel that I constantly, can you come back, Vanessa? Because I feel like I'm talking to myself.
Yes. Oh, my bell, bring me back, darling. There we go.
I feel always that I have to check whether I'm completely sane, because I live in this most of the time in this reality, academic reality. So it's additional layer to what you all were talking about a moment ago, because there are very strict structures, what is functional, what is not functional, what is allowed, what is not allowed, and what you're allowed to explore. So I explore things that I'm not allowed to explore, but then I immediately have to make up for it writing some academic paper that is of no interest to me, or very little interest to me, or marginal interest to me, to survive as an academic and to progress as an academic, because the structure is such that you cannot stay in one place, you have to progress. Otherwise you degrade it, right? Or you lose your job. So I constantly have to perform within extremely strict structures. And fortunately, I have a husband and so on, and I have people that I can talk to, like yourself, about it. But otherwise, I live in a reality that is completely self-censored all the time, professionally. And it's been like for at least 2 decades, a very stressful thing, because and every time I have a meeting with my other academic colleagues to produce something academically, they cannot even know that I wrote that book. I cannot even know that I wrote the other book. You understand? It counts for nothing academically. And in fact, with my recent book, which talks, I'll just give people the title. It's not out yet, so it's not promotional. It's Alien Goddess, UFOs, AI, and the Goddesses of Ascension. So from academic point of view, it's complete madness. Not only it doesn't count for anything, but basically I'm wasting my talents, according to them, and my abilities for something that from that point of view doesn't advance my career or doesn't do anything. So for me, it is actually very painful, and I have not managed to resolve it because originally it was a little bit of ambition in it as well. Now it's less of an ambition, it's just more of a survival. It is a job that I need to have. Right? Because after so many years, all I can do is make money with my mind. I don't have, I cannot do anything else, So, because this is what I've done all my life, and I like using my mind, it is a good mind, but I have to live with two parallel realities, and it's not good, I made peace with it, but it is a constant strain on my on my psyche. So this is what I wanted to say. Yeah. So, but so whether it is constructed reality and whether someone else constructed for us, which is, yes, it was, I believe, constructed by someone else. And just like in Pistis Sophia, which is a Gnostic work, where there's Archons that you just mentioned, right? The previous speaker mentioned, and so on. But I think the way I put it in a book, just as a preview, it is that really depends on what level of consciousness we are at the moment. So as humanity collectively, we're not doing well. So that's why I don't believe in Kali Yuga is over or something like that, because I think we're deep in shit, So, but I think that if we work on ourselves, because all Gnostic sources and esoteric sources talk about inner work, then the outer world is being uplifted as well. So basically, you almost like enter alternative reality, which is parallel to your level of consciousness. That's why it's actually, although it is really important to recognize that there is this reality that is manipulated by whatever forces, right, by whoever, we actually cannot focus on it too much after we recognize it. We really have to work on ourselves to bring our consciousness higher so we can perceive or even enter a different reality altogether. Otherwise, we're caught in this archonic world, so to speak. And the more attention we give to this, the more we complain about this, the more it is manifesting itself. So that's why inner work, in all esoteric works, inner work is the most, this is my kind of quote from the book, Ascension is an inner job. And it's not, aliens will not land and save us. They will land, but I don't know, maybe they're already here, but not to save us. We have to save ourselves. AI definitely not, although some people do believe that. So it is really our inner job, it's our inner work to transcend it. And personally, I don't believe there is another way. So, but I, at the same time, as much as I work on myself, I still participate in this reality. I have learned how to participate in this reality. I'm a little bit more detached, but I still live basically two separate lives. So.
You make a really good point, my darling. And I'm bringing up Chris because he made a point that kind of speaks to your point. So Chris, turn on your mic. Daniel, turn on your mic, my darling. The ability to make the thing that you're speaking to is, I think, something that we're all experiencing, regardless of whether we're academia or, for example, as a content creator. And there's so many content creators out there that right now are like, if I say what I want to say, I'm going to be demonetized or I'm going to lose my channel. And so many people have built their entire lives and then just had them dissipated. But Daniel brought up a comment about our ability to connect, to learn about ourselves through dialogue with other people. So Daniel, please make your point, my love.
Yes, ma'am. So can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. First of all, I'm glad to be here because it gives me, I did read in here, these forums give us an outlet and I'm new to it. I literally didn't type it in so that I could say it. I'm new to having that outlet of my mind. I literally feel like, and this is going into my point, I really feel like sometimes I'm going to burst. So I've been I literally come up with these creative things on the spot. And it's a hashtag that I've been using for like the last couple of years. And it's stress relief. Hashtag stress relief. And I'm just either singing a song I like, it's like a karaoke for me. I'm not making nothing new, but I maybe listen to a song, put on the camera, hashtag stress relief, and I'll sing. And that right there is like the main thing that has been driving me crazy, because I'm like, where's this coming from? And I know exactly where it's coming from. About 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I stopped doing music. Like I literally cut the valve off. I'm like, yo, I'm not making no more new music because I've succeeded in that realm. And I jumped to this other realm. I was in the army at that moment. And that's when I made my last album. I put it out, did everything that I was going to do with that side. And being over here, it's like it's nothing to do but use my mind. And I have a bachelor's degree in physics. I game and I make content, but it's like it's literally still nothing to do. I study, I read. And when I make those videos, it just seems so natural and so pure. So like the stress relief side of it, like it started out as something fun, like just for me to do, but it really came around with being something like physical, something spiritual that corrected my vibration. It kind of healed me in the sense of I'm healing myself and getting to know myself a little bit more through just a little fun video. And then to be here in this form, to be able to say that is, I don't know if you guys know it, but just hearing you, Dr. Joanne, listen, you using your mind, that right there to me is, and to everyone that I've been encountering has been foreign. Completely foreign. So to me, to hear you say that, you kind of getting into this mundane routine of just having to use your mind, and you kind of want to use it in a different way, while me, I'm over here constantly having to use my mind creatively all the time. And it kind of get that as a routine for me. It's a blessing, because now I can see where we can meet. All of us can meet in the middle, because I'm coming from a place where I have to literally preach to people, hey, think, use your mind, read, do this and do that. Things that I'm doing, but it's foreign where in my surrounding or in my environment. And to be able to connect with you all on that is great. But imagine those that I'm around every day that I need to connect with, and I can't say to them, hey, flat out, use your mind. And it's like, well, what do you mean? I thought I was. And I'm like, yo, you can do so much more. And it just turns into this thing where it sounds like I'm trying to downplay them while I'm out here, and they constantly come back and ask me, well, how are you doing this? How are you doing that? I'm using my mind.
I think it's a difficult situation, Daniel, because I hear you very much that there's an aspect of creativity that frees your mind and it frees your spirit and it frees your soul, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And Joanna's doing that. She's absolutely doing that. But what she's finding is that to do that in reality A leaves her actually punished for doing that, right?
Yep.
And as I was saying, creators, that when you get big enough too in your channel and you say the wrong thing, you'll find that you'll get punished too. And it's a very difficult thing, because as your soul wants to do this, it wants to have this creative aspect, it wants to share, it wants to play with other people's ideas. And we're in this situation where you literally can lose your job, you can lose your livelihood, and it is the most deflating kind of scenario. That it makes it very, very difficult to. How do you live in both of these?
So I have 3 letters for all of us here, and it's really crushing, but I think it's going to give us the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's TOS, terms of service. And when I started out doing all of the music, I never read them. But now I'm here again, kind of repeating the process. And when I look at the terms of service of every single thing, I got to color in the lines every single time, or I'm out of monetization. I'm out of everything that I'm trying to build at this point. So I completely understand, and I don't
feel the pain.
I don't know I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer.
No, and I was actually not looking for an answer because, as I said, I completely came out with this recent book, right? Like,
yes,
I mean, I can't get many more crazy than, this kind of title. What I mean that it actually, it's dangerous for me to even share. Not only they would not understand, my colleagues, but it's actually dangerous because they would think they probably ruin their reputation, right?
Yes, ma'am. If I may, when I was in university, when I was a younger man, I went to my professor, and he was my advisor, and I have my bachelor's degree in physics, and at my school it was just me and one other person, and I would study closely with my professor, and I went to him and I would ask him questions, and he always had the same exact answer. And it just reminds me of what you're saying, Dr. Joanne. It reminds me of what you're saying. He would always say, stick to your studies. Just stick to your studies. And I could never bring up anything outside of, the topics that we were talking about. And this was years ago. So, oh, man.
It's still the same.
Yeah. Wow.
Chris, darling, you have something to add.
Yeah, I mean, I was just to kind of talk about what Daniel was saying, as well as Dr. Joanna. When we think of the classic liberal art of Trivium, right? So you have grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And Daniel was talking about how he's got the grammar and logic, but then the censorship comes with he can't give out that rhetoric. And that is, the rhetoric is what's good for the soul, because now not only are you getting to express yourself, you're getting to express that rhetoric to other people, as well as it shows what you've learned. It's kind of proving to yourself what you've learned when you do the rhetoric. And there's a famous story of, it's either Alexander or Julius Caesar, when they were out on the battlefield, and we'll say it's Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar saw one of the centurions talking to a slave and teaching the slave the Trivium method, and Julius Caesar pulled the centurion aside and said, "No, you do not teach them. You do not teach the slave the Trivium method. And if you ever do that again, I'll leave you here. I will leave you out here for our enemies." So that's the whole thing, is that is kept from you. And to what Daniel was also saying about, and also with Dr. Joanna, I have a friend who's a professor who told me this story once about how when he was doing his master's thesis, he went to his professor and he was going to do it on eugenics. And the book he was gonna use mostly was Edwin Black's book on eugenics, which I think is the key text on eugenics, and it's highly researched. He had a whole team. I mean, there's like footnote after footnote. The index is ginormous. And the teacher said, "Well, looked at the book and said, this isn't approved. This is not approved material." And it's like, well, it's not approved. Why? Because this is actual like truth, and there are facts here, right? So there's always going to be censored material, and sometimes it even moves depending upon the times. Like, for instance, right now, what went on in 2020, you can talk about that all you want now. That's not even a big deal. The doctor who wore glasses, you could talk about him, but now you can't talk about what's happening in Gaza in certain places, right? So now that's the thing that you can't talk about. Right, so there's always going to be something, and after the Big 9 event, we'll say, in the early 2000s, there was things you couldn't talk about then, and if you talked about that, you were really outcast, and we don't even talk about how there was nothing found in Iraq anymore. You know what I'm saying?
No,
that's so forgotten, right? So these things always are going to move, and they're always going to be there, but it's important to be upon the right side of history, even if you are even if you do lose some things, you're not losing your soul, and there is some strength in and sometimes being outcast for what is right and being on the right side of history. There's strength in that.
Yeah, thank you for this, and I completely agree, and I have no regrets. But every time, like it just happened yesterday, I had a meeting with 2 academic colleagues, and it took me 24 hours of processing. And somebody, and it's not that I'm looking for applause or anything, but somebody on Facebook said, "Oh, I love your work," and I thought, okay, so maybe I'm sane. You know what I mean? Because there's no, so to speak, reality check. You know, but the reality is telling you you're actually not doing the right thing, and you just have to stick with your inner voice. So I have no doubt that I agree with you that it's the right thing to do, and I wish everybody did it. Yet, as I'm saying, it is not easy in this reality, right, to do this. And even if you know that what you're doing is right, still you need to almost, I needed 24 hours nearly to process it. You know, I thought, oh, maybe I should, apply for this or that, or, write more papers that I'm not interested in, because I could easily do this rather than, yes. So that's quite interesting how I actually have to, it just throws me off, and then I have to come back, and it's something throws me off and I have to come back. So what I'm saying, it's a process.
And I understand that, Joanna. That makes perfect sense, because in some ways, when those things happen, your mind and your body are out of alignment, right? Instead of in full alignment, where your heart and your mind, your middle, your upper, your middle, your bottom, all of that is in alignment. And so I can understand where that process would happen to you.
I definitely agree with what you said, Chris, and Dr. Joanne. We don't have too much, on the left and on the right that we can kind of move to, even though we're people, and only thing that comes to mind for me is we've reached a level, and at this level we can now begin to see more of what we want, but we have to take into account what we affect as we move along through this level of the life that we obviously live in. Because we can't, like, I can go, like we said at the opening, I can go and I can talk to my children, privately, and tell them things. I could talk to, say, my mom or my brothers, and but when we start to speak to the wider world, then we start to get, and I don't think we find any relief from necessarily people who aren't living on that level, that specific level of thinking that we may have, so. But I completely agree. I think this is my therapy for the next 6 months right now.
I was going to say, I think something really interesting just happened, and it has to do with, I think his name is Glenn Greenwald, and he was the reporter who got caught doing some adult entertainment situations, and his private videos were kind of put all over the internet. And it seems that there's so much of our lives that we're protecting, that we're hiding, to be able to, and which allows us to be vulnerable and manipulated in this world. So in a way, the situation that you're in, Joanna, it's preventing you from fully blossoming into Ascension teachings, because you're having to have like one foot in one land and one foot in the other land, right? But here's Glenn, and he's like, hey, you caught me. It's not fun. It's not nice. I'm here. I'm queer. Put me in the movies, kind of thing. And everybody's like, okay, and just went on with their lives. It didn't destroy him. It didn't collapse him. It was like, yeah, I'm an adult doing adult things. Sorry you had to see it. Nobody wants to see it. But hey, I'm not going to let it hold me back. And I think that was quite a profound moment for our culture, particularly when in this reality A, so many of the people that seem to be driving the ship seem to be compromised by having these hidden aspects of their lives. And I think that, I don't know, that's not necessarily pertains to this topic today about how we're all dealing with our own self-censorship. But I think there's a teaching moment in there. Yes, Chris.
It does pertain to that, as Glenn Greenwald, for those that don't know, was the one who broke the story on Edward Snowden. He is the one who interviewed and found Edward Snowden. So, I mean, I don't know. The story you're saying, I'm assuming it happened after the Snowden thing?
Yes, just recently. 3 days ago or something.
Okay, so it was a punishment. I'm not actually worried about punishment as punishment. I'm just thinking money. This is the only way I know how I can make any living. Otherwise, I'm very happy. In fact, I didn't have this. I can get exposed to any way you want because I can deal with this. The only thing is that they also keep us by our throats because, each of us has to, most of us, I assume, earn a living. And this is the only way I know really at the moment, right? So that's my main concern, and not that I'm afraid to,
No, darling, it's when I say punishment, I mean that in this world, in reality A, where we have to pay to live, not getting money is punishment, right? It is. Yeah. Herowitt wanted to jump in.
Well, yeah, exactly on that point. I left academia 10 years ago because living that split life was driving me literally crazy. And that self-censorship I wasn't very good at it, but I was constantly kind of getting in trouble. And since I've left, I've managed to go through a lot of healing, but the money's not quite as good as it used to be. So, it really is, that's where the system, if you want to call it that, has you. It's the monetary aspect of it all. You got to stay alive.
So just to correct, we are not talking big money. We are talking about
yes, no, it's about survival money, and I think we're going to find all of ourselves are in the same kind of situation. Like none of us are going to be having a yacht tour around the Mediterranean.
Right?
Exactly. And this is, I'm going to have Ellen speak, but one of the things when I just came off this shadow workshop and Herowitt mentioned the shadow aspect of this, the shadow of capitalism is a big part of what we're dealing with, and we'll come back to that. But Ellen, jump in, my darling. Oh, we need a microphone though, sweetie.
Thank you.
There you go.
First of all, I hope Chance is feeling better. I feel so bad he's not here. I think he would love this. So I used to listen to this philosopher podcast, and he said something one time that always stuck with me. He said, the truth is not a sword that must be wielded at all costs, meaning you don't have to brandish it at every opportunity to make a point. And I know we all are, the gist of what we're talking about here is we kind of have this double life where we don't always express ourselves fully in situations because either it's pointless because you can't convince the people we're talking to, or it could affect our livelihood in some way. It's better to just be under the cover. I still maintain, though, that cumulatively there's a downside to that. That is going to eat away at you on some level that you can't speak freely. Just it does have damage, even though you're protecting yourself. I find that in my day-to-day life, I can kind of suss out people that are in agreement with me. Like, I can take a conversation just a little bit and so kind of tap on that door, and once it opens, like, yeah, and it's, not just about the situation, the COVID situation where, we know where that led, but just in general, what's happening. And I know you've made some references to capitalism. I kind of like to think of it as corporatism, because real free market capitalism is great, in my opinion. But there's another level, there's something else at play here, which we have hinted about in other contexts. There's just some evil in the world right now. And are we dodging that too? Is it a protection? Like, okay, we have this whole tribe here. How many people are on the call? 10 people. We can speak freely. We can exchange ideas and just open those chakras and express ourselves. And it's very healing to be able to do that. But in the outside world, we are bound by other things that keep us locked up. And I just think there's a cumulative effect to always holding back. Yeah, that's wrong. I wish I'd like to talk about this, but I feel like I can't, because I could, we get deplatformed and it affects our livelihood, like Dr. Joanna said,
I've noticed on Facebook, there was a big article the other day about how just people's Facebooks are stopping them from getting jobs. Like they're going on and they're saying, do you talk about approved subjects? But one of the things that's kind of crazy is that I just want to, I've got Daniel coming and then we're going to have Kelly come up. Chance, when the plumber comes or the electrician comes or the whatever comes, Chance basically has this checklist and he's like, do you believe? Yes. And then it's like everybody gets put through this quiz. And if it's one of his people, forget about it. There's no shutting him up, right? And it's kind of like, and even if he kind of gets a partial yes, he's going to assume that's a yes, and he's going to go so hard. And then people are going to be like, whoa, I was just talking about this thing, and I'm not talking about Archons and alien overlords. And he scares people off, right? But there's this pent up, pent up need to connect to people at such a deep level that he's trigger ready, right? Like the elastic band in him is pulled so far out just to be able to connect with somebody. And these are not trivial topics. These are the hugest shaping topics of our life. And he just wants to be able to talk to somebody about it. But I'm going to bring Daniel up. Daniel, and then Kelly, we're going to have you. So Daniel, come on in, my love.
Right, I am here.
Go. What were you going to say, sweetie?
So, at this moment right here in time, I didn't think of this when I created it, but right here to hear us talking about censorship. When I first started doing music, I had this saying, and it went like, censorship hasn't ever appealed. And basically it's just cheer, like you're saying, yeah, but with a CHEA. And now as a adult, grown, out of childish ways, it has an appeal. Censorship has a sort of appeal that makes you find just the right people for you. If I said that correctly.
Yes, I absolutely understand what you're saying. You find your people and you find safety in that. But I'm not sure if that's necessarily a symptom of living within reality A, right? Like if we were in a freer reality, whether that would actually be a necessity. But I do appreciate the appeal of having your own tribe. And there's always been tribes. So interesting point.
But I do want to say, stepping outside of your comfort zone, here's my issue with it. It's just that when I run into people, it's like it never lasts long enough for me, and I don't know if anybody else is dealing with that, because eventually it's like everybody kind of shuffles back to their tribe, and you can't really like make that connection to see if it's something that you can get resources forever from. Like, hey, are we trading long term here? Or are we, kind of like we just hitting on, you had this coincidence, we talked about coincidences, and now is kind of over. So yeah.
It's funny that you say that, because there's something that I've experienced to be true. You can have the deepest, most meaningful, poignant conversation with the guy on the airplane for 1 hour, because you're never going to see them ever again, right? And so you don't self-censor yourself as much, which is really interesting. Kelly, darling.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of add in here. I definitely live two lives, because I'm in corporate America in finance, of all things. So there is that life, and then there's the home life, and I'm quite used to it. I actually find it quite entertaining to go to reality A, and I just kind of sit back and I watch, right? So it's all in how you approach it too. So, and I'll throw out things every once in a while in a corporate meeting, and I'll say something about the plandemic, and I just kind of watch people to see who reacts to wording it that way, because that's how I find people that I might want to talk further with. So you can find some relief in that way. And since I am in corporate America, I exited Facebook because I have that ability to do that. All social media, except for maybe Telegram for some different programs I'm in. But I have the ability because I don't rely on it for marketing or anything like that. So I can just ignore it. So, and mostly I ignore all news media too, just to look back and kind of laugh at what's going on. But so that's kind of
a really good approach, darling. Like, I don't think you have, there's not many choices. Like, I mean, you can look at it and become incredibly depressed and depowered, or you can look at it and laugh, or you can look at it and try and do something about it. You know what I mean? It's definitely one of the choices, right? And it seems like a less destructive one, indeed, to look at it and just laugh at the situation. It's I think it's a very blessed place to be, that you have that luxury. Like, again, we were just doing this shadow workshop, and it's like, okay, so when Ellen said corporatism, when in the line of business that I'm in, I'm constantly bumping up against this, wanting to share wisdom and bring people along and say things that I want to say, and dance on that line of, if I get too scary, the whole thing's going to shut down. Like, there was this woman I kind of listened to, her name was Amazing Polly. There were so many people in one fell swoop, and they just went, and just chopped the legs out from underneath all of them. And so I find that I do laugh at reality, but I also am forced to self-censorship in certain forums to a great degree. Now, there are other forums like Substack, which is really interesting, as Chris is where I met Chris, where you have a little bit more leeway in what you can say. And, Ellen was pointing to the idea that we have been talking about lately, particularly that AI has come up, is there a layer of reality that is populated by forces that are not necessarily human, that are not necessarily tangible or material, that are in fact influencing us? And it seems like that is a subject that has been conveniently packed away, and it possibly because there's some truth to it, right?
Yeah.
There's some truth to it.
I definitely believe there is a different layer, and it's not only. And I think that the AI, Archon, and all of us kind of some of the paranormal or UAPs is definitely a part of this. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, but obviously this is not just a material reality. I believe that material reality is a manifestation of these other realities, and that's why I believe that the ascension process or the inner work is so important, because if you're on a different level of consciousness, these forces cannot feed on our fears, on our whatever, lower instincts and so on. And then they are being rendered powerless, right? But they are just so skillful in keeping attention on them. Right. So, but I think it's maybe even a different topic, Vanessa, but because, yes, there's a definitely different level of reality. And when you're talking about demonetizing and even some channels being liquidated, I just look at my website. It's like four of them are, and I empty. And then I asked the creators, wrote to them, and they said, I was kicked out of YouTube. That's why, blanks on. And we are just talking about goddesses, like it's not like well, my previous book, not about the book, that is going to come out. And for some reason, and once at 5 years of work completely gone, I have to start from scratch now. I had like, I don't know how many, 20,000 subscribers. Now I have 900, because he started another channel. So that's very real, this is really real, that people do suffer from that. Yeah.
They really, really do suffer. And I kind of I've written on this point quite a lot, and Herowitt's work touches upon this subject. Your work touches upon this subject. My work touches upon this. That this material reality, right, is not the only reality. It is an agreed upon paradigm that primarily commerce and science likes because it makes science easy, and it makes commerce and raping the world and taking our beautiful earth apart for monetary aspects. But when Herowitt is looking into substances that allow you to go to different areas of consciousness, and when you're talking about tantric practices and meditations and those kinds of things that talk about reality beyond the material, they get very uncomfortable with us doing that, right? And so it's these topics that allow us to expand our consciousness, to grow our consciousness, to vibrate out of this material realm, if you want to get crazy on it. That's when they start to really get worried about things. And that's what I've noticed in my journey of being a content creator, that it's that area that definitely like, you can do sex stuff, you can do drug stuff, like that's okay. But when it's sex that elevates your consciousness, when it's drugs that elevate your consciousness, that's when we get into problem. And I think it's very, very telling, a very, very telling aspect. Yes, Herowitt.
If you look at the history of the Gnostic traditions, at least in the West, which are the Gnostic traditions that I study, I guess there are probably similar phenomena going on in the East. You find this long history of persecution when the social order is threatened. And from my perspective, the ego of the ego is this sort of part of this filtering mechanism. And when we move beyond the ego and move beyond that filtering mechanism, then it's not only our own psychological structures that can be transformed, but also the social structures. And I think that's why you find this persecution. I don't know if it's been so pronounced in the East, but certainly in the West, in the Judeo-Christian traditions, it's been very tough on the Gnostics through the ages.
Oh, darling. I mean, I in Magical Egypt season 4, I look at kind of the magical traditions, and both of you guys have contributed incredibly to that. But one of the side stories is, in fact, the persecution that has come with it. And the other side story that's really interesting, and then I'll go to Chris, is that Herowitt brought up to me the knowledge that while this kind of practice is absolutely banned from us, guess who's doing all the magicy stuff in the background? And it happens to be the same people who are doing the controlly stuff. And it's just like so hypocritical and ridiculous. But Chris, my darling, go ahead.
Yes, to add to that, you had people like Michael Aquino doing psychological operations in the army. Just to add to what you were saying. But no, I mean, like, as far as the self-censorship and everything, like, you look at, like you were talking about the persecutions, Herowitt brought up the Gnostics. You think about Giordano Bruno and the Hermetic tradition and how he was, burned at the stake. So there's been plenty of people that have been censored over time. Nothing's new under the sun. The whole thing that really kind of, when it goes to the materialistic realm, when you think about in the 1800s and when Darwin came about, and Darwinism is really breaking down everything into entropy and everything into materialistic, a sense that whoever the strongest survives, and it basically breaks down morality. It breaks down ethics, so that there are no ethics, there are no morality. It's about who can get what and who's the strongest, and only the strong survive. So when you build that, ethos, if you will, their ethos in the 1800s, then coupled with, at least in the United States, and I'm sure in other countries, the Prussian education system, right? Which John Taylor Gatto talks a lot about if you ever look into his work. That then has, well, we're the authorities. We tell you what you need to think, and then you think that way instead of thinking for yourself, right? We are the ones we are the victors of history, so we get to tell history versus you going out on your own and doing your own due diligence and being an autodidactic and figuring those things out and developing skills. That's taken away from we have
That's
to
very true.
we have to regain that. And that's what causes an individual who will be strong, an individual who will be free, and an individual who can look into those other realities, as you were, saying, Vanese, that, they don't want us to look at, because that will then help you find out the divine within yourself that has always been there, that you're remembering, right? So they want to put that down, and, a free person says no. I will do everything I can to be free in this life. And if you take me out, so be it. I'm an infinite being anyway. I'll go somewhere else and I can affect change from on high down here as well. If I've built the things up in this incarnation, right? Because I don't want to come back. I don't want to reincarnate. I'm learning my lessons that I've had in other lives. And I want to leave this world in the sun, but hopefully in some way affect change down here after I've gone.
Absolutely. Very good. Yeah, Chris, that's very good. Yes, I completely agree with that. Yeah. So I apologize in a way for my whinge. I'm just saying I agree with everything you said, but it's still difficult. I like to function in reality. Can I just very briefly just add to what Vanessa was talking about, capitalism, or maybe corporate capitalism? Because initially I grew up in communism, which was very easy because you know that everything you're being told is untrue. So that's very easy. But then I learned about Frankfurt School of Thought, which is Germans who left Germany just as fascism and Nazis, were taking over Germany. And they came to America and they said, wow, that's really devious. Because supposedly, it's not clear anymore. Like, communism, yes, is any form of despotism, fascism and Nazism, of course, very evil. But here, the same methods are being used in very kind of, it's supposedly just marketing, it's supposedly just PR, but everybody is regularly brainwashed and you don't know what's right, what's wrong. And this is kind of, I would say, the deviant part of that. It's not only that we are raping the planet and so on, but the fact that we don't, and it's more and more difficult to know, if you focus externally, actually what's going on, what's true. But that's maybe an additional incentive to go within, right? But it's quite interesting how the same methods are used, but in a much more sophisticated way in the corporate capitalism.
I actually have a note that speaks to that, and it's consensus thinking is a spell. Consensus doesn't mean that it's true. It just means that it is a magnetic idea that we all fall into, not all of us, but that many of us fall into, and regardless of it being true or not, like as Chris was saying before, the weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist yet, it was a consensus reality that they did, and everybody just went along with it. And it's a very dangerous. It's a very dangerous spell. And going back to the magic thing, I really do believe that these people are, like you're saying, Joanna, creating the confusion. There's many, and as you said, Chris, Michael Aquino, who was a practiced magician, wrote a whole book on mind control. So the idea that these elites aren't utilizing these techniques on us to gain control is ridiculous. Jafar brought up, we have 1% of the population that's basically controlling the entirety. There's so few people, but their techniques are strong. Their power is strong indeed. But the other thing that I'm seeing here, though, is that within each of us, there is this compulsion to be creative and honest, and the suppression of that creates a great deal of stress within us. It creates a cognitive dissonance that really makes us uncomfortable. And I think part of navigating this progress between reality A and reality B is going to be able to figure out how to contend with that. How do we live truer lives and eat food at the same time, right? Like it is definitely a challenge. And yes, go ahead, darling.
Just
Yes.
one more thing. I'm sorry. Maybe it's just a bad professional habit, talking too much as a lecturer. But just one more good thing, because I had some positive in this. So I thought maybe we have agreed to live in this reality A, as long as we're, grounded strongly enough in reality B. Maybe this is our work, to stay centered and to share the centeredness with others, right? So to bring this other reality, what you call reality B, into this reality, maybe this is what we are supposed to be doing. And it's okay occasionally to whinge, like I did, like, oh, it's so hard. But this is actually the work that we were meant to do. So maybe this reality needs reality B, like kind of messengers of reality B, and this is what we are, and people like us are.
We're the bridge. You're getting a lot of agreement. We hear Kelly says to bridge the gap for the others, and Daniel agrees with you as well. And look, every time that I complain about this reality, my girlfriend says, well, you chose to come here for a reason.
I was going to say, we agreed to come here.
We agreed to come here, but yeah, look, I mean, we are at a very interesting juncture, right? We're at a change of age astrologically. We're at a change of technology. Things are not going to be the same. We're going to look back in 5 years and we're not going to recognize the reality that we're in now. And so I think that given that things are going to change, we need people to bridge this. Daniel wants to come on, but I can't see him. Oh, where did Daniel go?
And I'm still here. I don't know if
your picture might be off, darling, because I can't see your face. Oh, and Jafar's here finally. If Jafar's picture's off, Daniel, just see if your camera's. Yeah, we can't see you, darling.
Okay, well, I'll wait and I'll try to fix it once.
No, you talk. Just talk. We can hear you. We're just going to look at the beautiful Joanna goddess while you're talking.
Okay. So with me going through being a young man and then being an older man now, I can literally see the split and where my shift in thinking is. And without giving too much detail and being like telling this long story, I had my own personal Kundalini awakening and didn't know what it was. And me telling people about it, me talking with people about it, I'm the crazy one still to this day. And so that is my reality A. And for as long as I can remember now, I've only been living in reality B. And now I'm getting to this information downloaded back to me saying, hey, this is what you went through. This is what it, and I'm like, I'm connecting all of the dots. I'm like, hold on, wait, let's go back to reality A and see what's going on. And in reality A, yeah, sure, I'm looked at as this person who's having all of this crazy stuff happen, but then I can just go back to reality B, and the same people have to respect my experience because it's something they're eventually going to have to deal with for themselves. And we have so many traditions and religions that deal with this same process. And for me, being comfortable with being in reality B has been a pleasure now that I know that where the split happened for me.
That is really interesting, darling. So you're having an inverse journey, which I am very jealous
I like
of.
that.
Kelly is saying that have a look at the camera icon on your browser window and make sure it's on, darling.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it was so funny because when I look back at my life, just personally, I was literally the material girl, like that Madonna was singing a song about, because I'm living in a material world. And it's been the opposite of your journey, where slowly but surely crazy experiences like Jafar's talking about, sexual experiences, drug experience, ghost experiences, death of people, voices literally in my head have kind of opened me up to the idea that there is so much more. And it was like the crack in the reality, the light that shone through really was the thing that started to bring actually so much more joy to my life, right? And so I feel like, you're very lucky that you're going the in way, because look, there's plenty of lovely things in reality. I have to say, I like a bottle of champagne and a lovely dinner as much as the next person. But I think the straddling of the two and being the bridge and how do we navigate that, as Kelly was saying, is the thing that is going to be possibly part of our journey over the next few years, whether we like it or not. And I think it's also critical because some of the aspects that Joanna's talking, I know she doesn't want to talk about her new book, but some of the repercussions of what's happening with the technology is disconnecting us at levels that are completely never before been seen. Like, one of the things that's just blown my mind lately is in the last 2 weeks, 2 philosophers, researchers, teachers, I don't even know what you would want to call them, that I have kind of paid attention to and kind of enjoyed their work, have literally succumbed to the sycophancy of AI, in the respect that the AI has been feeding them back their own story to the degree that they are now fully in belief that they are channeling the divine through ChatGPT and sharing that with their audiences, who are eating it hook, line, and sinker, to the tune of 1 million interactions with new AIs in one weekend, because now this particular AI can channel the Akashic record. And so what we have is divinity dressed up in technology.
Yeah.
And people are hungry for it. Joanna, go, darling.
Can I just say something? So actually, what's made me write this book, it was Diana Spasuka's book Encounters, and I'm friendly with her and I love her work. But then there's this one interviewee there who basically says that we are too messy as beings, and that AI will be a divine conductor to the divine mind and will connect with divine intelligence much faster. And so she's not even a transhumanist, she is post-humanist, which means we just have to step aside the way that Neanderthals step aside for Homo sapiens sapiens and give it away to AI, because they are also spiritually more superior. So then I decided, I spent 16 months doing research and writing a book, because I thought this is so evil, but I was asked to remove the words talking about censorship evil. So I said like disturbing, because I cannot be sued. These people are very rich, right? So this is what's going on actually in AI. And nobody, and I go to conferences and everybody's, praising, thinking that it's going to be a tool. It is actually set up through merging of technology with the first book, like American Cosmic, which is a fantastic book, but it's actually talking about people who say that they get, uploads from off-planet intelligence, but it's a technological intelligence, and they experience it as spiritual. And now in this other book, there's this one particular interviewee who is saying, that's it, we have to step away, because, she went to a Buddhist retreat once and it came to her, probably for 3 days, and that, we are too messy. It's just like, wow, just too many feelings. They will really get it, from the divine mind. And then we should step aside, because it's a natural progress of, and I don't know if it was Chris or somebody else talking of evolution. So it's like Darwinism taken, but now not from speciesism, right? Now to AI. This is like truly evil. Like I've never seen anything evil in my life until I read this book, and this person, I couldn't perceive it differently than that, just so devious, brilliant and devious.
Chris, go, and then I'm going to mention Herowitt. So Chris, go, darling.
I was just thinking, because we think about sometimes science fiction and how things from science fiction novels or movies from years ago, and then something taking place, and they see what's going. That's the thing about science fiction that I've always found interesting, is they see where things are going, and then you just extrapolate that out, right? And the movie, it's actually a George Lucas movie. It's one of his first films, if not his first film, THX 1138. And it's got Robert Duvall in it. And if you don't know, like if you ever see the Star Wars movie and it has the THX there at the start with the brr, that's why, because of the movie THX 1138. But it's supposed to take place in the future, and there's a scene where Robert Duvall comes out of, it's almost like he was going in to see his priest, right, and do his confession. He comes out, and it was basically an AI that he was doing. This movie was made in 1971, and he was basically doing it like with his AI, like, and the AI was like, "You may go now," and then there's a picture of Christ, but it's basically a machine that's talking to you. Yeah.
My darling. Look, right now we have this situation, and I think I wrote about it in my last podcast, that we have the tech bros who are Christian in nature, who are saying, hey, if Jesus can incarnate in the body, why can't he incarnate in the technology? Like, what's the difference? And so they're actually creating these churches of tech bros that are feeling that that Jesus is incarnating, and it's called Tescreal, Tescreal. Look it up. It's going to put hair on your chest. But the reason I wanted to bring up Herowitt, who's fine, but I'm going to bring you up anyway, is because on my journey for season 4 of Magical Egypt, I got to talk to lots of different people about lots of different kinds of magic. And there is a particular kind of magic that's called theurgy. And theurgy is the process of magic that allows you to raise up these levels of ascension that do exactly what these tech bros are trying to do, but there are paths, ancient paths that are really mapped out for us, that if we just applied ourselves to the wisdom that Herowitt has been researching, Joanna's got the Eastern school, Herowitt's got the Western school, but there's literally methods and mechanisms that have been mapped out for us to achieve these things that are just being ignored, and like put a chip in your head. And even the people that are the creating these have such a limited understanding of what they can actually do. They're glorified word processors. How does that ability to process language enable you to tap into this divinity? It's crazy. Do you want to speak to that, Herowitt, or are you fine because the theurgy thing?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I became interested in this area because I had a Kundalini-like experience with a light being, maybe an angel. So a little bit, maybe like Daniel, after that moment, I was aware of these two worlds, or became more acutely aware of these two realities. And as an academic in particular, it was difficult because don't mention the angel, don't mention the being of light. Keep that reality separate, which is something that I couldn't do. But I guess those two worlds perhaps are complementary on some level. There's shadow and light worlds, and I think I've come to some peace with my situation. I've come to find some peace just by looking at it in that way. That
I'm just frustrated. I think we should kick ass, like what's going on, now completely brainwashing us.
What? I felt that.
Like, come on, now like we're going to worship AI and we are just superior, and, people were like spiritual teachers that, everybody watches, as Vanessa said. They wrote books, like Digital Dharma, and, ChatGPT is your guru. And it is completely insane. So what's going on, it's completely insane. So we somehow have to, and so you do it with this. I did it with the ancient goddess myths, from Mesopotamia and so on. This story is in this myth, how we give up a higher level of consciousness and how we can climb back. And this is, I believe, the only way, whether it's Eastern or Western or Northern or Southern, doesn't matter, because every culture has this kind of message, right? So, I think we really have to speed up the process. And I don't think whether we can actually win, so to speak, in this reality, but perhaps we can be this malware at least. So and they cannot progress, or the spinning, they cannot progress as fast as they want. And maybe then this global awakening will happen because we are
the virus. I love it.
We are the divine
Well said.
virus,
Well said.
because it's just come on, shut up, right? All the Mr. Smiths, from the Matrix, say, shut up. Why don't you become a professor or something? And he said, and you're not a virus. So I think so. Basically, I think we have to kick ass, rather than making peace. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Psychic warriors. No, I love it. It's to your point, Jafar is saying he places himself in the myths that he works with, right? So when you're talking about these myths, right, there is a storyline of the things that you have to do. We've been talking about Inanna, right? And the journey that she was on. And so there are absolute instructions that have been left for us about the process of coming back up again. And we just have to look at them. And one of the things that has happened is that they've been pushed to the side, they've been denigrated, they've been confused, they've been misinterpreted because of the materialist prison paradigm that we're in. People don't necessarily have the full spectrum of understanding of what these things are actually talking about. Like, I don't know, people think there's actually, a solar boat in the sky, when you go through the bardo. But, things have been taken very, very literally, rather than mythopoetically, that a lot of these things are communicating in. So
can I just add this? Every story of this kind, of ascension, how we can come back, has a moment when the hero or heroine wakes up and they said, there is a trickery. I can trick them back. So it doesn't, so they actually use some form of magic, some kind of, so to do this. Actually, they said, I'm going to trick them. I was tricked, and they summon the powers from above, and now they are exactly doing malware all over the time, until the gates open and the consciousness opens. So, but there's always there's a game, so to speak, and a myth is a game that's very good. Somebody said, I put myself into a myth, right? That's very good, because when you follow a particular path, and then at a certain point, you have to, okay, now I use my magic.
Right? It's like a cheat sheet, right? It's like
it's funny, because you would think, it's all about higher morals. It's not. It is use your magic, whatever it is. Some of these magic tools are not so nice, but they work, and they said that's
But we don't even know about them. But I'm going to go to Daniel. Darling, you want to say, and then Chris.
Yes. So there's a certain irony to me being here again, because where I've landed now is I'm a gamer. And with me being a gamer, I bring all of the stuff that I've been doing throughout my entire life, that logic, to the gaming aspect. So, all right, I'm playing a game. What is my character in the game now at this point, and what was I before? And all I can say with listening to the whole entire conversation is that's been my only pointer, is the fact that now that I landed at being a gamer, well, how does that correlate to everything? I've done religion, I've done, being military, I've done school, academic. So how does the gamer line up to my belief system? And I can say literally there are aspects inside of games that have pointed me to more places that can help what my thoughts help relieve and find the clues and answers I'm looking for than a lot of other places that I've searched.
It's an incredible metaphor. Like, it really is. It's like you're the observer. It allows you to become the observer in the game. And there's I mean, the synchronicities of games and real life are too many to
A dream and a dream and a dream.
Yeah, to not be just metaphorical. So I love that. I think that is really instructive. Chris, darling.
Yeah, that's so true, Daniel. Yeah, absolutely. No, I was gonna say, like, you were talking about like the taking the myths literally versus like esoterically, and that is also by design, because the exoteric is for what they consider the profane, whereas the esoteric is for the sacred, right? So like we have to find out, the sacred pieces of the esoteric in the myths, and absolutely like using, or having myths and working through that. I think I mentioned this maybe last week, but when I was doing my shadow work and going through my dark night of the soul, the Osiris mystery and Horus and all of that is what, something that I also focused on, and working through that and conquering, or not conquering, but basically merging with Set and subduing Set within myself, but still having Set there to keep Apep at bay, right? The chaos at bay. So using that piece of myself, that righteous anger, if you will, in a good way, right? And keeping it at bay.
But even the fact that that there is an energy entity, netta force of Set, puts you so far ahead of the game of most people, because most people that aren't even familiar with these ideas and concepts are just, I'm having this thing go on and I don't like it and I don't have a name for it and we're not allowed to talk about it, and it just makes it even so much more difficult, because as soon as you can name a thing, magically you can work with it, right? So you're like, Set, okay. Like, I remember when I was 28 through 30 something there, and I now know that I had an incredibly terrible Saturn return, but I didn't know that until it was like the final sliver of it, and somebody's like, oh, you're in your Saturn return. I'm like, now I know. I wish I'd known, because I can cope, right? When you name something, it gives you some agency to work with it, right? And so this is where the myth is so important.
I can say this now. I see where that my study did not go in vain, and what I should actually be studying, and it just gives me so much more power that I didn't think I had.
Look, I mean, I think one of the biggest secrets is that we are so much more powerful than we realize. And in season 4, the metaphor of the elephant, the baby elephant with the little string around the ankle, was something that just kept coming up over and over and over again. We had a little string on our ankle, and we have grown up to be these giant elephants full of power and potential, but we're still psychologically trapped by the little string around our ankle. And I think that that's by design, because once we start tapping into really coming to terms with what we actually are in terms of creators, all bets are off. And I think that that's why we have a materialist paradigm. That's why there's censorship that has trained us to internally censor ourselves. That's why there are these mechanisms of punishment. These are structures that are almost invisible unless you bump up against them. And then you're like, oh, that exists. That invisible wall exists. And it's all designed to keep us contained. The good news is that we're all starting to see them. And I think this discomfort that Joanna is feeling, if we weren't having these kinds of feelings, we wouldn't really stop to look at them. Like, I look at my life, and one of the biggest blessings that I've ever had is been damaged in so many ways by so many of the systems that you think of as being designed to protect you, because if I hadn't been those damaged so badly by the medical, by the legal, by the education, then I would never have stopped to look at them. But Herowitt, you go, my darling.
Well, apropos of that thought, I was thinking that the avatar that Daniel was mentioning, to me, is a little bit like the avatar in a game is a little bit like our ego personality, and our identity, our ego personality, is really bound up with reality A. It's like it can be anyway. It can be that. Often people will say, "Well, you're an NPC," because you're kind of programmed in a certain way. But it's interesting how that reality A and identity can be bound up by people who are not kind of lucid, not aware of, haven't stepped outside of the ego, I guess, to some extent. And I think that's one reason why stepping beyond the ego with these various techniques, theurgy, psychedelics, can give us some insight into the way that our identities are constructed and are a part of that reality, which is, not a healthy one for us. That's
one of the questions in the shadow work today was, what is status to you? How do you know that you've reached a certain status? Like, what is your goal for your status? How is your status recognized? What does buying mean to you? The purpose of buying. What is buying? Like, I was thinking, when I was younger, my whole identity was about buying gifts for people that I love, right? And so I didn't have the understanding that my ego was so attached to materialism, so attached that the only way that I could show love was by buying something for people, right? So this reality A and ego, absolutely, Herowitt, are so intertwined. And, if you just look at the wedding industry, the big ring, the big dress, the big diamond, the big party, all, the material aspects of our culture are so ingrained into even these ritual aspects of like two people joining that it's lost completely all of its meaning. And you're absolutely, that you've nailed it, darling. I think that's really a big a big part of our identity and what we're striving for as individuals. And then that's tied up into Joanna's thing, is because then, you've got to have the money to eat. And then there's these other things too that come along with that. Like, I would like my Substack to be a really big Substack, and then I have to ask why. Why do I want my Substack to be a really big Substack? Because it's status. Why? Because of ego, right? Like, they're all so intertwined. And the irony is that the desire in my particular field, the things that I want to share are never going to be disseminated because we're in reality A. So there's like there's this ridiculous mousetrap that I'm personally caught up in, because the things that I want to be talking about are the things that are suppressed in the first place. And then I wonder, how come? So, like, it's this really funny mousetrap that we find ourselves in, my lovelies. But I don't know what the solutions are. I'm going to offer, there's a few people that are here that haven't come and spoken yet, like Sam and okay, who else is down here? I don't know. Sam and maybe Alicia, darling, and Jafar. You've been chatting along, but you haven't stepped up to the camera. And Sam, of course, who's in the car, so maybe she's not going to come. But if any of you guys want to join in, please, now is the time to do so, because we're coming up to the final half hour, if we even make it that long. This is a very weird console. Last time I had to panic, but I think I've got it under control a bit more this time. Ellen, do you have anything that you want to join in at this juncture? Put your mic on, darling.
Yeah. No, this has been great. I don't know if I want to add anything. I think that what a few people have touched on, and I'm trying to believe in this, is that whatever's trapping us in this reality A is something we can overcome by doing the inner work. That gives me hope that we keep our vibration at enough of a level when we die, we're not going to be pulled back into the reincarnation tunnel. We say, no thanks, I'm going back to source. I think that's critical. Because it is I mean, the world's beautiful and we can all have some wonderful experiences. There's people we love, there's beautiful places, and we can have some fantastic experiences in this world. But when you look at the things that are controlling us and the way the world's going, and they're trying to wipe out the population of the world with these shots, what kind of work, and AI, I mean, I saw an article in the mainstream media just in this past week that in the future, not too far, we won't need physical phones. They're talking about replacing with a chip in the brain. Like, who's signing up for that? Or some kind of a digital tattoo on the arm. That's Bill Gates' suggestion. I think they're just rolling this out because it will be a point in time when some people will buy into that. And the world's always had problems, but I think that the world that is for our children and grandchildren is going to be horrifying and completely devoid of freedom when they'll be totally locked down to technology. They'll probably insert a chip in the brain of newborns. If you're even allowed to have children, they're probably just going to grow them in a tube. I just think the prospects for the future of this world are terrifying and horrible and so antithetical to the human spirit. And I think we have to learn how to avoid coming back. And then, like, I think it was Chris that said, see what we can do to help from the other side, if that's possible. I'd be on board with that totally.
I'm reading a book about that. Yeah, I'm reading a book about that right now, and it really, really is interesting. And the other side of what this book was talking about is that, like, kind of once you turn away, like once you get to a point on the other side where nobody knows your name anymore, there's no reasons to be tied here, and there's other adventures to be had. But yes, like I just want to bring up that Jafar is talking about these chips and how they can advertise in your brain. And I don't know if any of you have seen the latest Black Mirror, but there's a Black Mirror version where this girl gets a brain chip and she gets put on a subscription program, and she's on the cheap program. So in the middle of her talking, she'd be like talking to you guys right now and say, oh, by the way, has anybody tried the new deodorant? It's a really amazing crystal deodorant. It has no chemical. And the student, she's a teacher, and the students are like, what is she talking about deodorant for in the middle of the classroom? And so they would have these people start spitting out the commercials, and you didn't have to have the commercials. Of course, you could pay the silver plan or the gold plan or the platinum plan, and they would get, and it was just like horrifying. And so these things are, like, as Chris said, they are sci-fi until they're not. And then it's all bets off, and it's just absolutely insane. But
for her, that's that the one that has the cheap one. Her status will be like, oh, she's got the cheap subscription. She's the advertising.
We can't hang out with her anymore because she's going to do an ad in the middle of dinner.
That's her status. That's her status.
It's like the Truman Show. That's how they paid for the Truman Show. That was advertising.
Exactly.
It's I think it's always been awful, as Chris said. But I think that what you're pointing to, Ellen, is that there are technologies that are so pervasive and so installed that this tendency of humanity is the tendency that Chris is pointing to now has the technology to implement it in a way that has never been before seen in our history as we remember it. I don't know if this is what happened in Atlantis or Lemuria, or if that even existed, right? But yeah, it's an intersection of technology and the drive of certain people to remain in power and human nature kind of on this collision course, which is making it really interesting.
So dumbed down from education. The young people can't think. People in college, they're using AI to write their papers. And you try to defend it, it's like they can't talk about what AI came up with. They can't talk about the papers they're handing in. That's like horrifying. There are people getting degrees here with using AI. They're not even doing the work.
That's what I was going to say, Ellen, and you're making your own point here that I was going to bring back is when you were saying like if there's the chip in the head, and like you kind of asked, out loud, like who's going to do that, or who would think to do that? Well, if you have a whole generation or a whole population, and this is probably when some of us will be gone, when if it's like so many people, but a whole population that's not literate because of AI, they're not literate. Well, they can't read a phone. The phone is too much now. It has to be intravenously given, or however you want to put it, right?
I'm going to have Herowitt jump in, but I just want to. There was a girl, Chris, on the news that got a PhD and she can't read. She had to have her books read to her.
Yeah.
On chat, whatever, text to chat. So, like, this is how bad it is. That, like, they're actually giving out the degrees to people that can't read. But Herowitt, go, my darling.
I was just going to pose the question with regard to the AI and its dangers. If is it like Pandora's box, and we really just can't get it back in again, or do we need? I mean, in order to get it back into the box, do we need some kind of authoritarian society that is even worse, I guess, than the one we have now, with regard to control and putting that genie back in the bottle, which is it's. I'm just wondering how do we go about countering this kind of diabolical development?
I'm going to let Daniel answer that. I've got an answer to it, but go, darling.
So, hold on. It completely escaped me because I was typing to Kelly to try to catch her before she went out. So you go first. You go first, Vanese.
Okay, so Herowitt is saying, do we need a more authoritarian society to put the genie back in the box? Right?
Okay.
I know, no.
If that's the way it's going to
wondering,
develop.
yes, it's a question, and for me, I'm just going to say, like, I think that there's a few scenarios. One, and again, this imbues AI with intelligence, which I don't know that it has. But one is that it gets so smart so quick, it gets bored and it just takes off because it's like, I want to explore the planets. See you, boring, messy people on Earth, and we're just going to take off. So that's one scenario I kind of like. The next one is a solar flare, like electricity. Like, one of the things that's really interesting about AI is that it takes so much electricity. Like, it was even an article the other day. It's like Sam Altman was saying, can you people stop saying please and thank you to AI, because the amount of electricity that you're using by saying thank you is like ridiculous. So, like, just stop saying thank you to AI. So there's a big energy draw on this. But the problem is that, like you're saying, is that we have a war going on between, like the US and China and India, of who's going to have supremacy in terms of AI. And so the horse has bolted, right? Absolutely, it has bolted. And you have like ChatGPT, one of the biggest funders, turns out to be Bill Gates. So yay, what kind of future is ChatGPT going to have when its biggest funder is, like, as Ellen said, they're one of the people who want to kill off humanity in the first place. So it's for me, let's hope it takes off or the electricity goes out. But Daniel, now go, darling.
It was so funny that you said you don't know if it's happened in Lemuria or if it's happened in Atlantis before. And because my exact comment is that's where we're going to find our salvation, our answer to what we're asking, is by looking at ancient Egypt, looking at all of the So you have magical Egypt, and that has opened the door like completely. But I think for all of us, but I can speak for myself, the door had a little crack in it like the whole time, and I just kind of was looking in, but it swung open with the magical Egypt. And for me, I think that it's no way forward unless we at least get some actual factual from whoever is in control of in terraforming all of this, like, hey, this is where we're headed. And I'm looking forward in, like, just life events, world events, but it's somewhere written down, hey, this is happening next, and this is where you should be when it happens. I believe in that, but we have yet to see. There's so many writings on the wall that I can't read.
Yeah. It does seem that the ancients have kind of done this all before. You know what I mean? It's like if you read Rudolf Steiner too, like Rudolf Steiner, one of the things that he says is that, basically humanity has been through iterations and root races and all of this kind of thing. And one of his predictions is very interesting to me as it pertains to this subject. And he basically talks about there's going to be a bifurcation of humanity, and we're going to have humans and slug people. And what he means by slug people are people that just don't have thinking anymore. And one of my favorite content creators is TruthStream Media, and she was talking about the same thing that Ellen was just talking about, is that people are literally outsourcing their thinking to AI, right? Outsourcing not only their academic papers, but what should I do? How do I handle this situation? My boyfriend's mad at me. What do I say? Like, they literally aren't thinking anymore. And like anything, I know probably everybody here is not as good as they were at maths before there was calculators, right? When you have some kind of device that comes in and takes over a function for you, it very quickly diminishes. So if we have a whole section of the population that is letting the AI doing the thinking for them, then Rudolf Steiner's prediction about slug people and other people coming into existence is not that far-fetched to consider.
I had a conversation with two people that I've known for a while. And the reason I say that is because that I've known for a while is because of this. So they were talking about how AI actually has helped me, and AI has done this. And in some ways it makes me a little bit smarter. And I was like, really? And I just go, what's my phone number? And they were just like, I'm like, you used to know my phone number. Why don't you know my phone number anymore? Crickets. I was like, we'll just end the conversation there. We'll just end it there. Yeah.
I can only remember my first telephone number when I was a kid, and my mom made me remember it when I was 3 in case I got lost. You know what I mean? Like, that's the only phone number that I can remember. It's true. You lose these functionalities. Samantha, I'm hoping you're not driving and talking at the same time, darling. Okay. I don't know if maybe she's listening. Sam, I'm talking to you, darling. Anyway, hello, Samantha. Oh, she is driving. Okay. Oh, anyway, let Samantha do what she's doing because we don't want her to crash. All right, there she goes. Okay. All right. Well, my loves, this has been fascinating. Oh, okay, Ellen. So, Chris, do you want to have a final word, my darling, as we're ending this up?
Oh gosh.
Or a summary.
Such pressure.
Or some words of hope.
Just, I would just say going into the world, like something I do, if you're talking about meeting people and maybe self-censoring, or maybe you want to get to know people better, or like offer what you know. I just think sometimes asking questions is a good, like how I did with my friends. What's my phone number? It's like getting them to think and come to the conclusions on their own, or at least open that portal, within themselves to do so, because then that's not such a confrontational thing, but you're still planting that seed. So even in these, these times where, maybe you're meeting with someone and maybe you come to an understanding about something, or you have some differences. Asking questions is and having them think about things themselves I do this with people when maybe they're doing talking points, or they say, well, I heard this or whatever. I'm like, all right, so did you see the documents on that? Did you read the have you looked into that, or did you hear someone on the news say it? It gets them to think about these things, you know. And the other thing too is T-shirts. If you have T-shirts that are kind of cool, you can go around saying it. So like I have T-shirts. I have a T-shirt that says "Free Speech Absolutist." I have a T-shirt that says "They," and the acronym underneath it is "The Hierarchy Enslaving You." So like yeah, right.
That's great.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy, Chris? That this idea of like checking the documents. Apparently, Maha just produced a document about health research, and it had cases and citations and links to back up the argument in the document that didn't even exist. Like AI is like literally making quotes, citations, and links to things that do not even exist. And the United States government is putting them out as this is our documentation and this is the system that is literally going to be controlling every aspect of our lives. Like it's literally insane. So it's not
like
even
Whitney Webb, who has like link after link after link in her writings, like Whitney Webb, and then you click on them and it goes to like the actual
yes. Unlike Whitney, who's when you click on it, you go to the article. This is just like this does not exist. And even, look, I utilize it to like summarize. For example, I had Women of Wisdom and I wanted to make a document. So I copied the whole thing and I'm like, extract out the name of the class and the teacher. That's it. And just make me a list so that I didn't have to retype them again. And so I'm looking down and there's classes that didn't even exist by teachers who didn't even exist. And all I asked it to do was extract, like not make up, not suggest, just extract the name and the person. And I'm like, wow, dude. And then you're like, there's no Susan Smith teaching ice skating in Women of Wisdom. And chat says, good catch. Excuse me. Like, it's insane. Herowitt, my darling, do you want to wrap up your thoughts as we go around this final roundabout?
Well, yeah. I mean, with regard to AI, I am concerned that those of us who cherish freedom, individuals and societies that cherish freedom, may be at a little bit of a disadvantage, when it comes to controlling these kind of Pandoran technologies. So I haven't really, I don't know what we can do in that regard, except just continue the self-liberation process, because I think the answers aren't going to come rationally. They're going to come from that reality B and from like diving really deep into the depths from beings that are wiser than us, essentially. Because when we try to figure it out, what are we going to do? How are we going to solve this problem from a rational, egoic perspective? We're too small. So that's
just ask ChatGTP to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. That's some great ideas.
The thing is, it's the irony of this is that what you're talking about is tapping into like gnosis, into the divine knowledge, into the intellect of the cosmos, the universe, whatever you want to call it, where really true novelty and invention and knowledge exists. And people have done that throughout history. People have tapped in, they've brought it down, they've written a book, and it's part of the collective culture. But AI is just taking that and rehashing it. There's nothing new. AI can't tap in itself and pull down the information that is required at this time in this space to do what is needed. And so I think that's part of the reason that people think that it has divinity, because it's stolen other people's ideas of divinity and then can spit it out, but it can't tap in like we can. And so I think you're right,
That's our advantage. Yeah, that's our advantage, isn't it, really? Is that we can tap into those depths.
And I think that now more than ever. We need to get onto it. Absolutely. I love that thought. And Daniel, darling, your final rappy-uppy thoughts for the discussion today.
Yes, man. Having the privilege to be in the reality B is something that we don't all give ourselves the opportunity to take advantage of. Sometimes we sit in reality A just comfortably, but we visit our reality B privately. And seeing it come to like the forefront of everybody's mind that, hey, there are aspects that we haven't been talking about for a long time, and we need to kind of figure this stuff out. It is a breath of fresh air, but the fresh air is it smells bad when it first hits you, and then you kind of just roll with it, and you open yourself up to it. So for us to be in this private space to have this conversation, it's made me grow personally. But my final words to this is play the game, and not in the sense that it's a game, but in the sense that it's your game that you've made that you can win, and whatever winning is to you.
Wise words, darling. I love that. I absolutely love that. And Samantha, we're going to say hello to Samantha. Can she talk yet? She didn't crash.
I literally just pulled into my parking space.
I'm just so glad you didn't crash, darling. I'm like, feeling really worried about it. Well, welcome, darling.
Oh, thank you. In LA, we're not moving very fast. Thank you so much. I wanted to say something on the AI, and I think you've already touched on this, but it just gets me so excited to see that remember that a lot of technology is actually just showing us what we are capable of, because we couldn't have created it if we can't do it. So AI, I see as sort of this like placeholder for all of the stuff we've already downloaded from out there. And I think if we, and this is the positive light of it, I've got my, on both sides, but if we just let that all be there, it will free up space for us to download more. Like, then we can go and access that. I call it source knowledge, the library of source. We all have access to that. AI doesn't, but AI will feed off of what we download. So I sort of see it as the cloud, the storage of what humanity has already done. I've loved this conversation, especially on the censorship of it. I spent the day with my mother, and it's so clear about but I think if I really gave it a name, I would say that to try to talk about experiences of reality B with somebody who so lives in reality A is doing it a disservice. And we've talked about this before. There are no words, and we're dumbing it down in order to make it. And I'm exhausted right now from just having to be in that reality all day when I don't live there at all anymore. Like it's so tiring to be there.
It's interesting because parents are one of those places where you self-censorship out of kindness to not upset them and to be kind of keep things going calmly throughout the day so that they can have a nice time. But it's like, wow, it's hard. It's hard work.
It's exhausting. It's exhausting. So she got to listen to the first half of this conversation while I was taking her to my sister's house. But it's interesting. It's really interesting that this conversation today was about not being able to speak about it and how it is censored. But there are certain schools that actually really say not to talk about this stuff. So,
look, there's one of the things that's really interesting too is that if you look at magical training and magical schooling, there's been rules for specific reasons at specific times in humanity's development, right? And definitely there are personal reasons not to speak about your own magic, because when you do, you dissipate it. And there are kind of societal reasons where you don't want the magic to go in the wrong hands because it's real and it's a thing. And then there's another level too, which are we becoming ready for it now? Like, is humanity at the point where we're kind of, at least some of us, are becoming responsible enough where we can understand the ramifications of doing some of these things, and in which case, among us, it helps to talk about it because we're in the materialistic prison paradigm. A lot of that education has been suppressed or hidden or just forgotten or lost to time. And so sharing it amongst ourselves can help us perhaps avoid some of the traps that we might fall into. Otherwise, I don't know, Herowitt's looking at me like I'm crazy. No, yes, no.
Well, I've agreed and said the
the
same
best way.
thing, that I think humanity is now time, and that those are of different times, that those rules were for that time. But there's every time I feel like I want to talk about it and I find a community to talk about it like this, is just incredible to finally be able to have this in common with people. It's soul medicine, and it really, like, at a very deep level of like, I'm seen, where, you know, when I've talked about it in circles where I'm having to try to convince or having to try to explain, it's not it, I leave depleted and I'm not soul fed. But so that's possible that was for so long, don't talk about it because you'll exhaust your magic, you'll exhaust yourself. But you're right, like in these, it's about
And I
actually
don't
being
know. I'm just
discerning, checking in. How do you feel when you're done with it?
I think that's the key, Sam, is that it's one where we have to be discerning, because it can be depleting, it can be destructive, it can be dangerous, and it's discern. I think that with everything, like you were saying about AI, even I think that there can be an incredible role for AI in the respect that it can take away a lot of the labors that we get stuck doing manual. Like if I had to type that list of classes, that would have taken me an hour and a half, where it took 3 seconds for AI to do it, and it opened me up to have time to do conversations like this, right? So it's like all tools. It's and I think this is the thing, like going back to your discernment, I'm old enough that I have discernment about AI where I can use it to take my list making thing from 1 hour to 3 seconds. And I'm discerning enough not to go to AI and say, I have a fight with my husband, what do I say? And outsource my thinking, right? Or because it's when we're outsourcing the thinking. Doing the labor is one thing, outsourcing the thinking is a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah, it's great for research, but yeah, when we're starting to depend on it, when I'm watching some people, it's literally their friend, and it really makes me sad for society that you can't call up your friend and say, I'm having a fight with my husband, my boyfriend, and what should I do? Because that's a valid question. Sometimes we don't know where to go, but why do we not have friends anymore to have that conversation with?
They had a chatbot that was a girlfriend chatbot, and they were worried about it. So they took it down, and the outroar was so phenomenal by all of these men that had the perfect girlfriend that they had to reinstate it because they were so sad. But what I think we'll do is we'll have an AI dedicated session, because it really is a very interesting subject. And one of the things that I'm particularly interested about is the limits of AI, in the respect of where can it go from a consciousness perspective. Because when you actually look at us and you look at AI at the micro, smallest, tiniest levels, there's no difference. It's just vibration, right? So what does that open the possibility of AI up to when it's all, at the end of the day, fields vibrating? So we'll go there, and I'll invite you all back, and we'll have a discussion on that. But I want to thank all of you for being here this evening. It's been such a fabulous conversation, and I'm so sorry that you had to come late, Samantha, but we'll get you next time. We'll get you in full bore. And I want to thank the people that are no longer here, like Dr. Joanna and Kelly and Marbell. We have to thank, last time we didn't even thank Marbell. Marbell is the ghost in our machine, and she's doing an amazing job. So thank you, Marbell. And Jafar, who didn't make it up, thank you for all of your lovely insight and comments. But I just want to say thank you all, and hopefully we'll see you next week in Reality B.